So the Associated Press just put out a new poll showing for the first time that a majority of Republicans are now in support of wearing face masks in public. So you can see this poll here talking about how 58% of Republicans now are in support of wearing masks. This comes shortly after Donald Trump recently wore a face mask in public, first of all, and secondly has been going around describing wearing face masks as, quote, patriotic, that it's the right thing to do for your fellow citizens. We've also seen a number of other Republicans around the country doing similar steps. Just one example here. This is Mitch McConnell earlier today on Twitter. He has this video out describing why you should wear a face mask, that it's really important, and also describing, wearing face mask is a sort of common sense step to sort of fight the virus. So we've seen a number of Republicans talking about this, and now Republican voters are correspondingly sort of receiving the signaling and are now more so in support of face mask wearing, or at least are saying that they're more in support of face mask wearing. So this is, a big step. Now, obviously, look, guys, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and give Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell credit for telling people that they should wear face masks in the sense that, like, this is obvious, right? They should have been doing this months ago, and Donald Trump should have been the first one out describing face masks as patriotic. Honestly, I would have even been okay if Donald Trump were to run around advertising and billing, sort of like pro-Trump face masks that are like Trump 2020. Like, honestly, if that means that more people are wearing face masks, guys, I'm not going to politicize it. I'm not going to make this all partisan stuff. If we can save people's lives wearing face masks, whatever. They can put out, Trump campaign gear that are face masks, whatever. I don't particularly care about that, right? So, but this is actually pretty important to see the number of Republicans that are now supporting wearing face masks at 58%. This is a really, really big deal. Now, I also don't want to sit here and say that it's like 100% because of the fact that Republican members in Congress like Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell and a number of other big names like Ted Cruz are talking about wearing face masks now. It's also just the fact that as we've seen cases skyrocket across the country over the past couple weeks, we have seen both Republicans and Democrats become more likely and sort of more willing to say, okay, you know what, actually maybe I should wear a face mask. It has sort of taken a while for people, even Democrats, although Democrats have always been in majority of support of wearing face masks. I think it started out at like 75% and now it's all the way up at like 91%, but sort of there's a bit of a progression, right? It takes a little bit of time after quarantine to be like, okay, well, I have to wear a face mask, but we're starting to see voters across the country realize, I have to wear a face mask. And just a little bit of proof that this is part of a more general trend, there was an Ipsos poll that came out and it says that 45% of Republicans support wearing face masks, and this was an increase from 35% at the end of June. So this was a poll which was taken in the middle of July, just like a few weeks ago. It was conducted from July 10th through 13th. So again, this is part of a general trend, and it's not like, I'm not sitting here saying that like, they saw Donald Trump talking about the patriotism, they saw Mitch McConnell talking about how, this is the right thing to do, and then suddenly, okay, now I'm in support of that. Was that the case for some voters? I'm sure, yes, I'm sure. But it's also just a part of a general trend, and again, Democrats are also being affected by this trend as well, where it went up from, again, 75 to about 91% support for wearing face masks, where, voters and just people in general are like, you know what, the virus is skyrocketing across the country. Maybe I do have to do my part. Maybe I do have to do my part as a patriotic citizen of this country, and indeed a citizen of the world, because we've seen the virus spread across the world, to, wear a face mask, do my little part, which, is literally no effort at all, to keep people safe and to protect people's lives. That this is something that I have to do as both a citizen and just as a good human being in general. So that's a good thing to see. Now let's talk a little bit about why we're seeing Republicans, like sort of members of Congress and Donald Trump, now run around talking about how important it is to wear face masks. Because again, I would have been happy, I would have wanted them to see them do this months and months and months ago when this thing was first coming out, talking about wearing face masks, right? So why did it take them this long? Well, they're looking at the numbers, they're looking at the polling numbers. We've talked about on this channel how right now, if you look at the polling aggregate right now, Joe Biden is absolutely curb stomping Donald Trump. And of course, it's because of the coronavirus pandemic. We know that Joe Biden's general campaign strategy literally is basement Biden. That's the criticism that Donald Trump is running on Joe Biden. Oh, well, he's basement Biden, but that's his campaign strategy. Joe Biden's campaign strategy is don't rock the boat, don't say too much, let Donald Trump trip over his own shoelaces, hang himself, let the Republicans make their own mess, and don't say too much. So ironically, it's the criticism that they're trying to hit Joe Biden with as basement Biden Republican, but it's the thing that's working for them. So, so it's a bit ironic there. But nonetheless, though, it is the thing that the Joe Biden campaign is trying to run on, and it is actively working. And Mitch McConnell can look at the polls. He is worried about the polls right now. One of the most troubling things about the polls right now isn't necessarily just the fact that it's so far over, so far skewed that Joe Biden in the aggregate is about plus 10, plus 11 over Donald Trump. It's also which states are in play right now. Like, for instance, the state of Florida. No Republican has won the presidency without winning the state of Florida in like 96 years, since like Calvin Coolidge in like 1924 or 1925 or something like that, right? Republicans need to win Florida in order to win the presidency. And interestingly enough, the reason for that, of course, is because Florida tends to vote right of the general popular vote. So overall, usually when you look at Florida polling, it's a few points to the right or a few points leaning more Republican than the popular vote total overall, right? So for instance, there hasn't been a time since like 1970 something, I think 1976, 1975, around that time, that Florida has voted more Democratic than the popular vote. So overall, usually for the past many, many decades, almost like 40 years here, Florida almost always votes to the right of the general popular vote. But right now, that's not what's going on right now. If you look at the polling right now, Florida is lined up with the popular vote. Now, of course, that's because Donald Trump is really struggling with older voters. Because the coronavirus disproportionately affects older voters, they are more afraid of the coronavirus. And so they're paying more attention to Donald Trump's coronavirus response. In fact, they're weighing the coronavirus response maybe a little bit more than some younger age groups and some younger demographics. And so the fact that Florida is an older voting population, it's particularly damaging for Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump, we saw him a few days ago canceling the Florida RNC convention because he was too worried about the bad press, particularly and especially in the state of Florida, that this would be a disaster for the Republicans and for Donald Trump in general. But things really heat up when you start talking about the Senate, because while it may be the case that Donald Trump has absolutely no chance of winning the presidency, I mean, we're looking at a situation right now where, Donald Trump, if the election were to held today, only has about a 15 to 20% chance of winning the election according to most models. Again, the polling numbers look absolutely terrible for Donald Trump, and there's almost no way that Republicans could flip the House back red, even if Donald Trump managed to pull out and win the election in November. But the Senate is the open play. The Senate is the open play for Republicans. They're hoping that they can maintain the Senate, Mitch McConnell especially. Right? So it is leaning to the possibility that Democrats could take over the Senate, but it's not entirely guaranteed. I give it about a 55 to 60% chance that the Democrats take it over. Again, definitely not guaranteed, but it is in play and it is possible. Particularly states like Arizona, North Carolina, Maine, and Colorado, those states especially are in play for Democrats to win. Now, Republicans are likely to pick up Alabama. You'll remember Doug Jones won in that sort of weird election a few years back. Well, now Republicans are likely to be able to pick back up Alabama. So, Democrats are likely going to lose Alabama. But again, Democrats picking up those four states there, it could be a situation where, it's going to be a sort of 50-50 balance, and who wins the Senate will essentially be a question of who wins the presidency because of, as you know, the vice president casts deciding votes in the Senate. So that's going to be a really interesting situation that we're going to have to follow, whether or not Democrats are able to take over the Senate. And it is clearly an issue when it comes to Republicans for why they're talking about wearing face masks so much right now, because they're like, oh my gosh, this might be a clean sweep. We might lose everything. We might lose the Senate. We might lose the presidency, and the Democrats are going to control everything. So they're trying to tell everybody, well, you've got to wear a face mask. You've got to engage in social distancing. But of course, the ironic part here is that they can't get their act together and pass a bill. I've had multiple videos out in the past few days on this channel talking about how Republicans are struggling so hard to get their act together and pass an economic stimulus bill to keep people safe, keep people having money in their pockets to stimulate the economy, and even just to keep themselves fed during this pandemic, and Republicans can't get their act together to pass even just basic bills. So right now we're starting to see all these weird hodgepodge ideas that are coming out from Republicans, and some of this is just negotiation stuff because they literally can't come together to agree on like a specific plan and a specific solution. So we're starting to hear ideas floated like privatizing privatizing Social Security, things that are wildly unpopular, or cuts to Social Security. And the reason, of course, for that is, again, since they can't come together on a specific thing that they all agree on, what they're saying is, well, I don't agree with more spending, but I'll lend you my vote. I'll give you my vote if you do these things, if you do these other things that I want, including these things like cuts to Social Security or privatizing Social Security. And it sort of becomes a trade-in bargain because the Republicans are not on the same page with this stuff. You know, some Republicans like Marco Rubio are saying, look, guys, we've got to spend money now if we want to save the Senate. Otherwise, we're going to lose the Senate. And then other Republicans, like Rand Paul is calling the other Republicans in the caucus, calling them Bernie bros, saying that they're Bernie bros because they want to spend money. So the Republicans are not a unified party right now. They're really splitting apart. They can't seem to agree how to do this. And of course, it's being exacerbated by what Nancy Pelosi is doing, which is that Nancy Pelosi isn't putting any legislation on the table really either. She's not telling them exactly what things she wants to see in their bill. Right? And that just leads to added pressure because then they have to guess. They have to figure out, okay, which things are or are not going to be cut, especially when you're talking about a situation where Republicans can't even come together on the thing that they actually agree with. And so it ends up being that hodgepodge that I was just describing, right? Because then it becomes an issue for them of, well, hold on, what if Nancy Pelosi says we're not going to be able to privatize or do cuts to Social Security? Then are you going to have my vote? Well, probably not, because they're not interested in that kind of spending that the other people need in order to get, in order to sort of get together, get that vote that they need in order to just pass it through committee in order to even get it onto the floor for a vote. So this is a total disaster right now for Republicans, and they're having a complete meltdown. And it's why the thing that they're turning to right now is face masks, because they can't actually come together for an economic solution. So they're like, guys, please just wear face masks. Please, 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 may the coronavirus numbers go down, please. It's like they're begging to God in order for the numbers to go down, as opposed to doing what they can in order to get the numbers to go down. So that's the situation which we find ourselves in right now as a country. We're seeing Republicans being more willing to wear face masks. That's a good thing, right? I'm not going to sit here and say, obviously, right? Like, obviously, you know what? If you get them over to wear face masks, I don't care why they did it. If they're wearing face masks, they're saving lives. At least that's my opinion. So anyway, I just wanted to update you guys on that, give you guys a little bit of background. So if you did like this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.